History as we know it is written by the victors. 2,000 years ago, Christianity was not a monolith. It was a battlefield, a battle of ideas, a battle of texts, a war for the very soul of humanity. In this war, there were casualties. Gospels were set to the torch. Teachers were branded heretics. Entire communities were wiped from the face of the earth. The Orthodox line was triumphant, giving us the New Testament in the form that lies on the altar of every church. But the vanquished did not disappear without a trace. They hid their treasures. They sealed their truths in clay jars and entrusted them to the most reliable guardian on earth, the desert. Egypt, the province of Elminia, a place where the Nile River separates the world of the living from the world of the dead. Here, in the arid caves of the Jebel Karara mountains, time itself behaves differently. It stops. In 1978, an event occurred that would, decades later, send an earthquake through the Vatican and overturn our understanding of the one figure synonymous with absolute evil: Judas Iscariot. Local peasants, the fellahin, were searching for treasure. They sought gold, jewelry, amulets, but what they found was something the black market values far more than gold: a limestone box, and inside, a book. Not a scroll, but a codex, a book with pages, stitched with ancient thread and wrapped in leather. When they opened it, the papyrus pages began to crumble into dust. The peasants could not read the ancient Coptic script. They did not know they held in their hands a text that Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon in the 180s AD had ordered to be destroyed and forgotten. They did not know this was the Gospel of Judas, a text where Jesus calls Judas his most beloved friend, a text where betrayal is not a sin, but a heroic sacrifice. This manuscript would journey through its own hell. It was stolen, frozen, sold, and hidden away in a bank vault. For 30 years it would decay before it finally reached the desk of a scholar. And when it was deciphered, the world shuddered. The story of this text is a path from a desolate cave to the sterile quiet of a radiocarbon dating laboratory. It is a plunge into the philosophy of the Gnostics, who believed our physical world was a mistake. It forces us to ask why the Vatican might fear these crumbling pages, and it poses the ultimate question: could the most hated man in history have been the only one who truly understood Christ? The fate of the manuscript itself is a thriller. After its discovery in 1978, the codex fell into the hands of a Cairo dealer named Hana. Hana was an experienced trader on the grey market. He did not know its contents, but he understood its antiquity. In 1983, his apartment was robbed. Thieves took all his valuables, but left the old, rotting book. They did not understand it was worth millions. Frightened, Hana decided he had to get the artifact out of Egypt. A sacred text, once hidden from an empire, was now a fugitive in the modern world. It was an act of theft against history itself, the smuggling of a national treasure, a priceless codex spirited away to Geneva, Switzerland. In a sterile hotel room, a clandestine meeting took place. The price was named $3 million. Scholars who glimpsed the papyrus were aghast at its condition, but the sum was impossible. The deal collapsed. Disappointed, the handler flew to New York, and there he committed an even greater crime. He did not sell the ancient book. He entombed it. In a bank branch in Hicksville, Long Island, the papyrus was cast into a cold metal box. The rent was paid years in advance. This was not safekeeping. It was a slow execution. Papyrus is organic matter. It breathes. It requires a precise microclimate to survive. But inside the vault, the air was poison, the humidity a death sentence. Pages that had endured 1,700 years in the dry Egyptian desert began to surrender. In just 16 years in New York, they started to crumble into dust. The codex was dying. Not until the year 2000 would a savior emerge. A Swiss antiquarian, Frieda Nussberger Chakos, a woman with an iron will and an instinct for masterpieces, finally acquired the codex. When she opened its container, she wept. The book had disintegrated into a pile of brown confetti, hundreds of tiny, brittle fragments, the sequence of pages utterly lost. The tops of the leaves had turned to sand. She gave the wreckage her own name, the Codex Chakos, and delivered it to the Maecenas Foundation for its salvation. A desperate rescue mission began. In a specialized laboratory in Basel, the world's finest restorers convened. Their leader was Rodolphe Casser, a legend in the field of coptology, the man who had translated the Nag Hammadi library. When he saw the fragments, his assessment was bleak. "We will never," he declared, "be able to read this." But they began. With tweezers and microscopes working under glass, they held their breath, for a single exhale could scatter irreplaceable words into oblivion. It was a puzzle of 1,000 pieces, with no image on the box to guide them. They assembled the text by the flow of the narrative, by the grain of the papyrus fibers, by the very shape of the tears. For 5 years they toiled in silence. And then, out of the chaos, words began to surface. Judas and Jesus. The world of science is a cynical one. The claim of a Gospel of Judas was too sensational. The market was rife with forgeries. The memory of the so-called Gospel of Jesus' wife, later exposed as a fake, was still fresh. They needed proof, ironclad and absolute. The phase of forensic examination began. The team was led by Timothy Jewell of the University of Arizona, the very man who had dated the Shroud of Turin. His method? Accelerator mass spectrometry. The process required a sacrifice. A tiny fragment of the precious papyrus had to be burned, turned to graphite, so its atoms of the carbon-14 isotope could be counted. 5 separate samples from the papyrus and its leather binding were put to the test. The result was definitive. The year 280 plus or minus 60 years. This meant the codex was created sometime between the years 220 and 340, a time frame that places it perfectly within the flourishing age of Gnosticism and, crucially, before Christianity was forged into a state religion. The words condemned first to heresy, then to a vault, and finally to dust, were now authenticated. A voice from the edge of belief, nearly silenced forever by greed and neglect, had been resurrected by patience and science. It stands as a testament not only to a different telling of an ancient story, but to the razor's edge upon which all of history rests. A fragile narrative, pieced together from the dust, forever one breath away from being lost again. In the 2nd century, the Bishop Irenaeus declared war, not with swords, but with ink and fire. His targets were the so-called heretical texts, writings that offered a different vision of Christianity. He ordered them destroyed. For nearly 2 millennia, we believed he had succeeded. Then, a whisper from the dust. A codex, its papyrus the colour of desert bone, dated to the 3rd or 4th century. It is a Coptic copy of a much earlier Greek original, likely penned in the turbulent heart of the mid-2nd century, precisely when its ideas were being condemned to oblivion. But dating the paper is not enough. An ancient papyrus can be a modern lie. One could simply take a sheet filled with mundane records, wash it clean, and inscribe a new sensational text, a forgery known as a palimpsest. The true test lay not in the page, but in the ink itself. The challenge fell to chemists from Macrone Associates in Chicago, the very same institution trusted to analyze the ink of the United States Declaration of Independence. They brought the full force of modern science to bear on this ancient secret, employing Raman spectroscopy and X-ray fluorescence analysis. The logic was simple yet elegant. Ancient Egyptian ink was a humble mixture of soot, pure carbon, and a binder of gum arabic. Later, in the Middle Ages, a new formula emerged, iron gall ink. If the scanners detected even a trace of iron, the document would be exposed as a clever fake. The results came back. The scans showed nothing but pure carbon. The ink was water-based, bound with gum arabic. It was a recipe straight from the 3rd century. And yet, one final formidable test remained, the test of migration. Over 1700 years, ink does not merely dry. It enters into a slow, inexorable chemical reaction with the papyrus. It becomes part of it. Under an electron microscope, this process is laid bare. The pigment can be seen penetrating the very structure of the fibers, crystallizing, staining the cellulose with its ancient presence. To create such an effect artificially, in a matter of years, is impossible. It is the immutable seal of time. The verdict from the commission was unequivocal. The document was absolutely authentic. This was no modern forgery. It was a voice from the past, a voice that powerful forces had tried to extinguish forever. It is called the Codex Chakos, and it is not one book, but a collection, a library in miniature. Within its fragile pages lay 4 texts: the letter of Peter to Philip, the first apocalypse of James, in which Jesus warns his own brother of the suffering to come, a mysterious fragment titled the Book of Allogenes, or the Stranger, and finally, the most explosive of them all, the Gospel of Judas. All these texts are bound by a single radical philosophy. They are Gnostic. We have been taught to imagine the first Christians as a unified band of martyrs, hunted and thrown to the lions. This is a comforting but incomplete picture. Early Christianity was a boiling cauldron of ideas, a battleground of dozens of competing sects. Some believed Jesus was a man, others a spirit, a third group an angel. The Gnostics, from the Greek gnosis, meaning knowledge, were the intellectuals of this chaotic era. Their philosophy was radical and deeply pessimistic. They believed the material world itself was evil, a prison, a catastrophic mistake. The God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, the creator of this world, was not the true God. He was a lesser entity, a demiurge, a craftsman. To the Gnostics, he was an ignorant or even malevolent pretender who falsely proclaimed himself the one and only deity. They gave him names of contempt: Yaldabaoth or Saklas, the fool. The true, supreme God was an unknowable light, a fullness they called the pleroma, existing in a realm far beyond the grasp of our universe. This God was pure spirit. It did not create matter, for matter was a defilement. And humanity? We were sparks of that divine light, trapped in prisons of flesh and bone forged by the demiurge. The goal of life was not righteousness or blind faith. The goal was gnosis, the secret, liberating knowledge of our true origin and the path to escape the cosmic cage. It is a story not of salvation through faith, but of enlightenment through forbidden wisdom, a story that, after 17 centuries of silence, can finally be told. To defy the laws of Moses was not the ultimate transgression. The true sin was something deeper, more pervasive: ignorance. Gnosis, the ancient Greek word for knowledge, was its only cure. It was an awakening, a sudden, shocking realization of one's own divine nature and the desperate need to escape the material prison of the world, to return to a realm of pure light. For the Gnostics, Jesus was not a redeemer of sins. Sin was a triviality born of ignorance. He was a messenger from that other realm, a teacher who had come not to save, but to awaken the divine sparks slumbering within the clay of humanity. This was a profoundly dangerous idea. The nascent church saw the Gnostics as an existential threat. One early bishop branded them the firstborn of Satan. Their books were systematically hunted, their gospels set to the torch, their followers exiled into the dust of history. And among those lost texts, one stands alone, a quintessence of this forbidden belief system: the Gospel of Judas. It is a manifesto from one of its most radical sects, the Cainites, who revered Cain and other great rebels of Scripture. When the scholar Rodolphe Casser first translated its brittle, thousand-year-old pages, he was confronted with a figure he did not recognize. This was no gentle shepherd, no suffering martyr. This was a Jesus who laughs, a laugh that is sardonic, chilling, and utterly detached. The scene is set. The apostles are gathered for a meal, the Eucharist. They offer a prayer of thanksgiving over the bread. Jesus approaches them, and he begins to laugh. The disciples are wounded. "Master," they ask, "why do you laugh at our prayer of thanksgiving? We have done what is right." Jesus replies, "I am not laughing at you. You do this not of your own will, but because it is through this that your God will be praised." Your God. With 2 words, he shatters their reality. He tells Peter, Matthew, and the others that they are not praying to the Heavenly Father they imagine. They are praying to the demiurge, the lesser, flawed creator of this defective world. Unknowingly, they serve their own jailer. They erupt in a storm of rage and confusion. "You are the Son of our God." Jesus answers them coolly. "How do you know me? Truly, I say to you, no generation of the people that are among you will know me." A silence descends, thick with fear. Only one man finds the courage to stand: Judas Iscariot. He does not flinch. His gaze is steady. "I know who you are, and from where you have come," he declares. "You are from the immortal realm of Barbelo, and I am not worthy to utter the name of the one who sent you." Barbelo. In the intricate Gnostic cosmology, this is the first emanation of the supreme, unknowable God. The Divine Mother, the very source of light. In this moment, Judas is the only one who passes the test. He is the only one who sees that Jesus is not a Jewish Messiah sent to save Israel, but an alien intelligence, an emissary from a higher, purer world. Jesus takes Judas aside, away from the others. "I shall tell you the mysteries of the kingdom," he says. Thus begins not a story of betrayal, but one of profound and terrible trust, a secret alliance between a teacher and his only true student. The climax of this gospel is not a treacherous kiss in a garden, but a staggering command. As they speak of the fate of the cosmos, of the stars that lead men astray, Jesus delivers the line that would echo in headlines across the world in the year 2006. But you will exceed all of them, for you will sacrifice the man that clothes me. Consider those words, the man that clothes me. For the Gnostic, the physical body is nothing more than a garment, a temporary vessel, a prison of flesh and bone. The divine spirit of Christ is trapped within the human shell of Jesus of Nazareth. As long as that body lives, the spirit is tethered to matter, bound to the flawed world of the demiurge. For Christ to finally return home to the infinite light of Barbelo, the body must die. The cage must be broken. In this telling, the most infamous betrayal in history is reframed as an act of supreme loyalty, an agonizing, necessary sacrifice, performed by the only one who truly understood the mission. It asks us not what we believe, but why we believe it, forcing us to confront the possibility that in the stories we tell of gods and men, the greatest villain might just have been the greatest hero. The cage must be broken. To achieve this, Jesus asks Judas for his help. He cannot take his own life. That would be a defeat. He must be slain by the forces of this world, the Romans, the priests of the lesser god, the demiurge. But someone must set the process in motion. Someone must betray him. It must be the best friend, the one who is strongest, the one who can endure the weight of an eternal curse. Peter is weak. The others, they do not understand. Only Judas is capable of the task. Jesus tells him, "You will be cursed by other generations, but you will come to rule over them." It is an inversion that shifts the poles of Scripture 180 degrees. Betrayal becomes the ultimate act of self-sacrifice. Judas does not sacrifice Jesus, he sacrifices himself. His name, his reputation through the ages, his very soul in the understanding of ordinary men. He takes the sin upon himself so that his teacher might be set free. This is a tragedy of ancient scale, rooted in a text of staggering complexity. Map of a hidden universe. Jesus speaks of a great invisible spirit, unseen even by angels. He tells of how from the light, autogenes, the self-generated, came into being, of the creation of eons, worlds, and celestial lights. And then a catastrophe. An angel, or eon, named Nebro appears. His name means rebel. And another, Saklas, the fool. It is Saklas who says, "Let us make man in our image and likeness," and he fashions Adam and his Eve. But this is no act of divine creation. It is an act of enslavement. He deceives them. In the Gospel of Judas, Jesus openly mocks the biblical book of Genesis. The God of the Hebrews, he says, is Saklas, a foolish demon who believes he is the one true power. And the apostles, they serve Saklas. The sacrifices they offer in the temple, believing they please God, are in fact offered to demons. The church that Peter and Paul will build is, according to this text, a church founded on error. It worships the jailer. It teaches the resurrection of the body, the very prison from which the spirit must be liberated. And Judas alone belongs to the unshakable generation, to the people who carry within them a spark of the true light. The rest of humanity are merely the creations of Saklas. They have no immortal soul. They will vanish with matter at the end of time. It is an elitist, unyielding faith. Salvation is not for everyone. It is reserved only for those who know, for those who possess gnosis. The publication of the translation in 2006 ignited a firestorm of euphoria, but within a year, an academic scandal began to brew. Professor April DeConnick of Rice University accused National Geographic of profound translation errors, of shaping the facts to fit a sensational narrative. The central dispute ignited around a single word, daimon. In the Coptic text, Jesus calls Judas a daimon. The National Geographic team translated this as spirit or divine being, drawing on the classical Greek philosophical tradition, where a daimon could be a guardian spirit, a muse, a mediator between worlds. But Professor DeConnick argued this was a profound misreading. The debate rages on, a modern echo of an ancient war of ideas. Was Judas the 13th apostle or the first Gnostic? A demon of betrayal or a divine agent of liberation? In the end, the Gospel of Judas leaves us not with answers, but with a profound and unsettling question. What other truths lie buried beneath the sands of history, waiting for a voice to tell their story and an interpreter to decide their meaning? In the Gnostic texts of the era, the word demon was always a term of power, a designation for a spirit being. In this telling, Jesus does not praise Judas. He identifies him. You, he says, are the demon who will perform the most profane, most necessary task. In this interpretation, Judas is no hero. He is a supernatural instrument of destiny, a spirit bound in human form. He is doomed to betray because it is his very nature, and Jesus will use that cosmic essence to achieve his own liberation. The argument remains unsettled. Linguists wage war over every syllable, every fractured phrase. The papyrus is a ruin, its context lost in the voids left by 1700 years of decay. We are reading a ghost script in a language no one living speaks, attempting to drape our modern notions of good and evil over a framework that may have recognized neither. But even if the darkest interpretation is correct, the text remains a revolution. It presents Judas as the only disciple who understood the terrible truth, even if that truth was itself demonic. The final lines of the manuscript are barely preserved, yet the ending is clear. Here, Judas does not hang himself. He does not cast back the silver coins in remorse. The story cuts to the moment of betrayal. Scribes watched him, waiting to seize him in prayer, for they feared the people who revered him as a prophet. They approached Judas. "What are you doing here?" they asked. "You are Jesus' disciple." Judas answered them as they wished, and he received the money and handed him over. The end. The narrative shatters at the precise moment of the transaction. There is no trial, no Pontius Pilate, no cross, no empty tomb. To the Gnostics, this earthly aftermath was irrelevant. All that mattered was the handover. The instant the physical body, the prison of flesh, was surrendered to destruction. The task was complete. The ultimate fate of Judas is painted in shades of prophecy and doom. Jesus foretells a vision for him, a great house that many desire to enter but cannot. Your own star, Jesus tells him, has led you astray. Perhaps Judas was sacrificed just as Jesus was. Two offerings for two different ends. One to liberate the spirit from the world, the other to fulfill a destiny written in the stars. The official response from the modern church was cold and swift. Just days before the Gospel's publication, Pope Benedict XVI declared in a Holy Thursday sermon that Judas was no victim of circumstance. He made his choice. He chose darkness. The Vatican stands firm. The canon is closed. 4 Gospels are truth. All else is heresy, a curiosity for historians alone. But in the quiet halls of theology, a different admission is made. This text is dangerous, not because it absolves history's greatest traitor, but because it reveals the staggering diversity of early Christianity. It is a testament to a faith that was once a wild garden of conflicting ideas. Had the Gnostics prevailed, we would have inherited a different religion, one without the cross as a symbol of torture, without a cult of martyrdom, without the hierarchies of bishops and priests. It would have been a faith of personal, mystical experience, a private search for knowledge, for gnosis. The Church of Orthodoxy, the Church of Irenaeus of Lyon, was the victor because it was simpler, more organized, more accessible. It offered salvation to all, not just to a chosen few who claimed to possess a secret light. The Gospel of Judas is more than a controversial text. It is the voice of the vanquished, a final, faint whisper from a history that was lost, buried in the Egyptian sand, a testament to the battles that defined not only a religion, but the world it would go on to create. It is the whisper of an alternate history, a voice that was strangled in its cradle. Under the unblinking eye of multispectral imaging, page 33 of the codex reveals a secret. At the very passage where Jesus speaks of sacrifice, a stain mars the papyrus, a smear of blurred ink. Was it a deliberate attempt by an ancient hand to erase a word, to correct a heresy? Or was it something more human, the tear of a scribe fallen upon the page? Forensic analysis of the pen pressure reveals a tremor in the ink. Here, the scribe's hand grew agitated, the strokes sharper. The man copying this text in the 3rd century understood its weight. He knew he was transcribing a death sentence for a belief system, and that it could easily become his own. He was risking his life. This book was not found among the ordered shelves of a palater, in a tomb, a grave. The prevailing theory is that a Gnostic monk, fleeing the inquisitors of an ascendant Orthodox church, bequeathed the book to the earth itself, commanding it be buried alongside him. He hid it in the only place he knew was truly safe, within death. He held a desperate faith that in a future age, another aeon, humanity would find it and be ready to understand. He was right. 1700 years later, we read his work. The Codex Chakos now rests in the Coptic Museum in Cairo, sealed under glass in a chamber of inert gas. But the genie has been released from the bottle. Its discovery forces a fundamental re-evaluation of our concepts of good and evil. Judas, the archetypal traitor, the most reviled name in human history. But what if he acted not out of greed, but out of love? What if he took upon himself the most grievous of sins in order to save the world? In this light, the line between saint and sinner dissolves. Evil becomes a potential instrument for good. The ultimate betrayal becomes an act of supreme fidelity. This ancient text is more than a historical curiosity. It is a test of our own maturity. Are we prepared to accept a complex reality, a world without the simple comfort of black and white? The story of Judas is not merely the story of one disciple. It is a question posed to each of us. For what higher purpose would you sacrifice everything? Would you consent to be damned so that others might be saved? For 1700 years, Judas Iscariot waited to ask. And now he gazes out from the crumbling papyrus, his silence more profound than any sermon.